Does anyone else like to steal from the rich and give to themselves? Well, today we're talking how to play Smugglers, and the Smugglers do a bit of stealing and a whole lot of enriching themselves. Perhaps the highest skill floor, highest skill ceiling faction in Dune, maybe, arguable. Smugglers do a lot of things uniquely. They do a lot of things quite well. A bit of a jack of all trades. And quite good at most of them as well. So let's talk Smugglers. We're gonna theme our chapters for this one after Robin Hood characters, because we like to pillage the nobles of their loot and use it to aid our band of merry men. Let's talk chapter 1, Maid Marian. Why play the Smugglers? Well, we like to play the Smugglers because the Smugglers get rich. They make a lot of money for their pillaging lifestyle, going and stealing from the poor in this case. But you can steal from the rich too. Pillaging players makes you a lot of money. Pillaging from neutral villages makes you a lot of money. Then you also make a lot of money taking it from other players. You can sustain a huge economy with the Smugglers. The Smugglers are always an economic powerhouse if you're doing it properly. Why else might you play? You might play the Smugglers if you like to be scrappy. You like to be a cockroach, a rat that's hard to stamp out. You know, the Smugglers can afford to lose a lot of territory, can lose a lot of fights and really look like they're down and out. But a lot of the Smugglers' power is hard for other people to figure out or to stop, because they can build underworld headquarters that steal stuff from other players around the map. The Smugglers can have a very powerful economy and still strong win conditions, even with relatively little territory. So they might look like they're down and out, but still be contenders. They're scrappy like that. You might like the Smugglers because they're dangerous. The Smugglers have a pretty powerful army, by and large. They start off the game very strong. They go down a little bit in the mid-game, and then back at the end game, they sort of peak up again as a very powerful army. Strong abilities to assassinate people, strong abilities to murder people's main bases. The Smugglers are always a threat to everyone in the game at all times, for the most part. They're very fun to play. We like the Smugglers because they're flexible. Smugglers can chase kind of any win con. Not the best at them, but they could threaten hedge. You could chome with the Smugglers. You might be able to pull off a cheeky governor play as the Smugglers. You can assassinate people, blow up their bases. Everything's on the table with the Smugglers. They're very versatile. The access to all win conditions is probably one of the biggest strengths of Smugglers, is even if a game takes a turn one way or another, the Smugglers are usually able to pivot and get on to the new win condition. The Sheriff of Nottingham, why not to play the Smugglers? Well, you might not like to play the Smugglers because they're very fragile. A lot of their units have very low health and very low armor, necessitating extremely careful positioning, a much more intensive micromanagement kind of play style with the Smuggler army. You need to sort of do a lot of shooting and scooting. You need to be very aware of the angles that you're engaging enemies on, because you need the extra time for your guys to shoot. You need to be able to slow down and snare the enemy while you can sort of kite them backwards, shooting them with your snipers. It's a lot to do. It's micro intensive for sure. And if you do it wrong, your army just folds like paper. You get wiped out, and you go, I thought you said these guys were strong. Well, they are under the right circumstances. We might not like to play the Smugglers because there's lots to remember. When you're playing the Smugglers, there's a lot to do. You gotta be out here, you need to be pillaging stuff, you need to be checking other people's villages to install underworld headquarters, you need to be seeing what people are building in their main bases, you've gotta be prepping all kinds of different operations all the time and using them regularly to maximize your income. There's a lot to do. The Smugglers are a busy faction, always trying to figure out where the next place they gotta move, the next thing they gotta go. Sometimes you got to split your army in half to pillage over here and pillage over here, and some guys got to go grab these cash boxes. Oh my goodness, it could sort of overwhelm you. If one of the complaints of the Atreides style is that it's very slow and passive, one of the complaints maybe of the Smuggler style is that there's too much to do, and you're always gonna fall behind and forget something. But that's a bit fun too for some people. You might not play the Smugglers because they're not the best at everything. They're not the best at anything, maybe. But they're very good at many things, right? That jack of all trades, like we were talking about. The smugglers can threaten any win condition, but will rarely be the most threatening in any win condition. It depends on your lobby, but anything the smugglers can do, another faction probably could do better that one particular thing. The smuggler's strength is in their versatility. Last reason you might not like to play the smugglers because, like we talked about, there lots to do and lots of micromanagement. It is a high skill floor. You need to be fairly capable to play your smugglers properly. You need to have a good idea of what other factions have and what other factions are doing. You need a lot of game knowledge to really succeed with smugglers. So it's a challenging early faction to master for a lot of people, but very rewarding. Let's talk Chapter 2, Chapter 3, who knows? We're not keeping track. Chapter Will Scarlet. What makes the smugglers unique? The defining features of smugglers are the underworld headquarters. So what underworld headquarters are is you can go to another person's base on the map, any of the villages that they have. You find one that looks tasty, maybe is making some good stuff. Do I have any good options here? Not really. I think I've got most of the good ones already locked up. Let's go check out over here. This one's okay. Okay, so we find this place, and you got this little button here. It says Install Underworld Headquarters. This costs a small amount of Solari and a relatively small amount of authority. And you can install, it takes like a day, less than a day, almost instantly, and it puts this little Underworld Headquarters, which is almost like a second little mini village slots on it. And you can build, without Plascrete, but rather with just a little bit of Solar, you could build unique smuggler buildings that get their benefits based off of what the resources produced in the other players' villages. So in this case, this village is making a lot of spice, a lot of money, some water, some knowledge, some intel. So we could say we want the bootleg market, give us a portion of their Solari production for money. We build that, it's making us 7 Solari there. Maybe we want some of their water, so we will build our water thieves, steal 30% of their water. Now it's making us 3 water. Oop, the Fremen one. We'll keep playing. Ignore that. Where were we? We have a third building here, actually. Normally you can build 2, but we have a counselor that lets us build a third one. So in this case, he's making some knowledge, and we'd like some knowledge. We'll produce some of that village's knowledge. Boom, it's not even our village, and it's given us 22 Solari, 3 water, and 0.6 knowledge per day. Not too shabby for an investment of, I don't know, maybe 600 Solari to do that. And that basically stays there the rest of the game. There is nothing someone can do to get rid of your underworld headquarters, short of abandoning the village or someone else coming in and liberating it. The underworld headquarters that you spread throughout the world will stay throughout the whole game, giving you this constant income. So that's one of the huge strengths of the smugglers, is you derive a lot of your resources based on the resources that all the other players are making on the map. And because of that, you love high economic factions like Carino, like the Harkonnens. And if people come and they take your villages, it's not the end of the world, because you're making your money off of their villages. So it's hard for people to hurt you. Underworld headquarters, super strong. The counterpoint to that is they can, or not the counterpoint, but the bonus point, they can also build special ones in main bases as well that do even extra super bonuses based on the districts that people are building in their main bases. It's a really cool, really unique mechanic, and it's what makes the smugglers what they are, right? What makes them so good is that they're, as other people get better, the other players doing better makes the smugglers do better too. So it's hard to be too far behind. They're super cool. Smugglers have a really flexible expansion. So the authority cost to annex a village suffers no penalty from distance to your main base. Every other faction in the game, the further the village is from your main base, the more it costs in authority for you to annex it. Not true with the smugglers. It costs the same to annex the village right next to my base as it does to annex the village way in the corner of the map, far away from me. You suffer no penalty for distance. So because of that, you could have this really unique expansion pattern where you're grabbing stuff way far away from yourself, or maybe way early in the game before other people can get there. It offers a lot of opportunities, even in late game play. If everyone gets together to go fight the Harkonnen or the Fremen to keep them from winning, you could very easily cap some Fremen back territory during that process relatively cheaply. While, in this case, if Corino wanted to try to capture Fremen territory, it would just be prohibitively expensive. There's no way he could afford the authority penalty of annexing stuff so far from himself. But smugglers don't care. Now, to counteract that, the cost to annex a village is increased 50% more by owned villages. So that's another penalty. The more villages you have, the more cost to annex something new. That affects smugglers even more than other players. So the smugglers, like Corino oftentimes, have a relatively lower amount of total villages they control. But so you try to prioritize having better ones, right? And that comes back to bite you in a couple ways, but it's also a bit of a superpower. But we'll talk a little bit more when we get to expansion and things like that. But what else is unique? We would be remiss if we didn't mention snipers. The premier range unit in the game, snipers, are incredibly strong. In fact, most smuggler armies are a couple units to sort of help, and then the snipers. The snipers are what matter. They're what's going to do all of the killing power, and they're what we talk about when we say they're a high micro-faction. Making sure your snipers are staying out of trouble, making sure your snipers are picking off the right targets as quickly as possible is really, really critical to playing smugglers, to playing, the snipers, the faction that we call it. Snipers are really unique because they have really high power shots. They break through enemies' armor. They have an extra 100% power on their first attack. They just do huge damage. They are the glass cannons of the game. Super high damage, very low hit points, no armor. You gotta keep them protected. But if you do, they can kill anything in the game. Armor notwithstanding, hit points notwithstanding, snipers are tough. Smugglers have an extremely unique counselor in Stakhanov who enables like a sort of a totally unique play. That's another. I mention it only because Stakhanov is one of the wilder counselors in the whole game. I actually don't have her here. We'll talk about her later. But Stakhanov makes it so that if you control territory not connected to your other territory, it is twice as difficult. It provides more resources, and it's twice as difficult for enemies to siege down. Again, enabling that kind of far-flung play style where you grab stuff way, way, way out of your normal range that you might not otherwise grab. It's just a really unique way to play. We'll talk about her when we get to counselors, but know that she's coming up. She's cool. The other unique thing about smugglers is bounties. When you get to the Landsred, you have an opportunity. Everyone's got their little special stink they could put on things. The smuggler special stink is not stink at all. Everyone loves it. It's a bounty. You put a bounty on any agenda saying, I will pay you out. You get paid out money if you vote how I want you to for this agenda. So you say, the smugglers are coming up for the Speaker of the Council. We put a bounty on it saying, if you vote for the smugglers, you get paid. And it's like, I think it's 20 Solari per every one vote. Is that true? I think that might be true. So it can add up to a huge amount of money for other players. Now, you don't get paid that. You actually pay a little bit of money to put the bounty up. And then other players get paid out if they vote the way you wanted them to. This is a very double-edged sword. Sure, you could make people vote the way you want to, but in the process, you're giving them huge amounts of cash. For example, if the Harkonnens, and they've got no influence here, they've got 200 votes. If they spent 230 votes, 230 times 20 is 4,600. If they vote the way I want them to, they could make an easy 4,600 Solari. What an insane windfall for them, right? Just for me getting what I wanted in the Landsred. So most of the time, I actually recommend not putting a bounty on things because doing so can very much enrich your neighbors. Sometimes that's useful too. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, but bounties are, like I said, a double-edged sword. You can get what you want, but in doing so, you're making everybody else rich, and that is dangerous. Many an inexperienced smuggler player has inadvertently funded entire empires of other players by frequently using bounties on things. You gotta be very careful with the bounties. They're super strong, but strong for other people too. Many people are often quite happy to see you bounty things because sometimes they get more out of it than you do. Whew, bounties. The other unique thing about the smugglers really to talk about, I think, is the late Landsrad joining. They don't actually join the Landsrad Council and get any votes until, what is it? 5K. 5K, they get 50 votes, so less votes than other people. They make up for that a little bit with their unique payment. When they pay the Imperial bribe, they get an Imperial leniency buff, stacking additional influence production. So smugglers start out basically not political at all, and then by the time the late game rolls around, they have a huge influence production, probably more than most other factions can possibly do. So they can become very powerful political players in the late game, but not in the early game. So it's hard to grab those early things you want, but in the late game you can often grab things that other people would not expect you to, because you just have this passive influence income that is, quite frankly, gigantic. Let's talk Chapter Friar Talk. I think it's time to talk some counselors. Let's look at counselors. Let me save this game, make sure we don't lose it for good. Take a look at the smuggler counselors. Smuggler counselors are not super exciting. I think 3 of them, none of them are must-haves. So the one we were talking about earlier as the unique one really is Stakhanov here. Villages without any smugglers adjacent, other smuggler regions adjacent as neighbors, take 100% longer to siege, which makes it a long freaking time. And they produce 20% more resources. And if you lose the village, you get 50% of that authority refunded to you. So Stakhanov allows you to, as long as you're far flung, one village here spaced out, one village there spaced out, allows you to have this really interesting playstyle where you have very few villages that are making a lot of resources for you that are really, really challenging for the enemies to get rid of. She used to be even stronger, but the multi-cap hedge boom got nerfed a bit recently in recent patches, and Stakhanov has fallen a tad out of favor, but she's still pretty cool, and you can kind of make her work. Even if you don't make her work all game, you can make her work like for the first half of the game before you then go back and sort of spread out your empire a little more. She's just pretty cool. That 100% longer to siege is really oppressive. People hate that because you think you're going to take something from the smugglers, and then you've got to sit there for like a month before you can liberate it or before you can annex it or something, and it just it ties you down for so long. It's incredibly annoying. Stakhanov is pretty cool. Maybe not the meta anymore, but you could still make her work, I think. Let's start from the top. Staban Tuik is very good. Underworld headquarters with no empty slots produce 5 Solari per neighboring Underworld headquarters. So these are the secret bases we're building in other people's villages. Basically building more of them next to each other and filling them out with stuff makes you even more money. That's great, we like it. Also, this is the one that gives you the 1 additional extension slot so you could build more stuff in those villages. That is oftentimes kind of nice. It's not critical. You can live with 2 slots for the most part and get a lot of benefit out of the Underworld headquarters. One thing the 3rd slot does open up is a bit more political play, I think, because there is a +1 to Landsrad standing option that is hard to squeeze into the 2 slots, but very easy to squeeze in as a 3rd slot. So I think Tuik here is maybe your default counselor, maybe your go-to government option, political option counselor. Tuik's very good. Linger Boot also got a bit of a nerf, I guess a couple months back. He was once very, very economically powerful, but his water cellars and water networks got nerfed down a bit. He produces extra water for you, which is great. Smugglers love water because they do a lot of walking in the desert and they don't want to run out of supplies. So he is strong just as a military pick and enabling you to project your power further just with that extra starting water. He's also a bit strong as an economic pick, though this is another double-edged sword kind of thing. The water network and the water sellers allow you to give your water away to people in exchange for money, and also to get water back from them at a smaller rate. So it works out so your Underworld headquarters will make you a bit more money, but you are granting extra water to that player to use. Which is, like I said, double-edged because sometimes you don't want to be given other players water. Maybe it doesn't matter, but maybe it's the difference between them being able to come in and wreck your lands because they've got so much extra water that you are giving them. I think Boot has fallen a bit out of favor lately as well, but is still a perfectly reasonable pick. If you just spammed water networks and water sellers all across the map, you would have tons of money and everyone would have tons of water and you'd all be happy. maybe, but I don't know, maybe suboptimal. One of my favorites actually is Lashan Hara here. Mostly because of her intel and influence per information level in any field. So this is, you get your agents, you put it in your Arrakis, and over time it moves your information level from 0 up to 1. And all of those sort of things could be 0 to 3, even other players, or Arrakis or Chom, or the Spacing Guild or the Landsrad. So it's making your agents basically pay out extra intel and influence, which are both very valuable resources. So we like Lashan Hara a lot. She helps enable that sort of political government play because of tons of extra influence she'll make. She helps make us a lot of extra intel as well, and smugglers love a lot of different operations as well, especially some expensive ones. So Lashan Hara is a lot of fun. Faction information levels reducing slower is no big deal. We don't particularly care. Gaining information in other factions by trading intel or influence to them is kind of interesting. So if you go to the trade screen and you send someone intel or influence, it will give you a boost in your information level on them. So the information level being, if you put an agent on them, over time you would get an information level up, and if you have 3 information levels on someone, you can assassinate them. So Lashan is sort of your assassin girl too. If someone was foolish enough to take that trade, it could be a quick boost in information levels for you to allow you to get to an assassination quicker for them. Also, just the intel that she makes will ease your assassination times as well. My go-to, usually Lashan, usually Staban, Tuik, and Hara. Everybody's got funny names here, but you can't go wrong with anybody. You can make all these work. They're lots of fun. Smuggler, you can fully random into smugglers and have yourself a good time. Let's get back to our game. Where was we? So we've been talking counselors. We talked, let's talk Little John. Expansion, economy, developments, all that good stuff. Expansion, when you're expanding with the smugglers, it's tricky. This is part of what makes them unique, because you get to sort of pick and choose your territories, and you can't take too many of them because you've got extra penalties. You've got to be very choosy about what you get, because you also are deriving a huge amount of your economy from walking out and pillaging other villages around the map. You want to have a lot of available villages to pillage too. So you could even have perfectly good things that you might want to have, and it might even be more valuable to not have them yourself and just go and burn them down every 20 days and pillage them, right? So you pick and choose. You grab your first spice field, and then maybe you grab whatever your second close region is that looks real good to you. And then after that, you're real choosy with your third or your fourth or your fifth. You love spice fields, but your one true love as the smugglers is any special region on the map. Why is that? Well, because the smugglers, a lot of games these days go to hegemony victories, and the smugglers are going to struggle getting up to the hedge victory because they can take fewer territories than other people, because they can't cheat and build 2 craft shops on their special regions like Carino can. The smugglers need to plan ahead, and planning ahead usually means fast craft shops. You want to grab the special regions that you can before your neighbors can get them, and you want to toss up a craft shop on them pretty early in the game and get that passive daily hedge cooking. That is critical for you to be able to stay in the hedge race, but it's dangerous because it's going to make people mad. If one thing that all good players are going to be doing, they're going to be popping open this faction summary, they're going to be looking at what people's chom is, and they're going to be looking at what people's plus daily hedge is. And if anyone's too high, and too high is usually above 20 or 30 daily or above 10% of chom, that is a target. That's someone that other people are going to want to come and knock down a peg or two. So it puts a bit of a target on your head, but as the smugglers, you don't really have any choice. You got to go craft workshops, I think, if you want to be competitive in a hedge type game. You got to get them cooking as soon as you can. So we prioritize expanding into special regions as quickly as we can. We like spice regions. They're not critical because we can, again, derive a lot of our economy from other people's bases and from pillaging, but it doesn't hurt to have extra spice fields to do it too. We really like the likes of these Imperial research stations, or any place just with extra research hubs. I think the smugglers are starved a bit on knowledge gains. You can sort of pick them up later from other players as well, but there's lots of tech that you want, and there's lots of tech that would be really nice to have. And because you're going to have a relatively smaller empire, getting extra tech and things out there early on is quite useful for the smugglers. So we know we love our craft shops. Careful thought is also required because you're spending your authority to expand into the regions that you're gaining around the map, but you also need to spend your authority to create your underworld headquarters, right? And every one you make makes the next one more expensive, and you sort of want them everywhere, right? Even this place that doesn't particularly make anything good, just by building it here adjacent to other stuff, we could take a little bit of their money, we'll take a little bit of their water, we'll take a little bit of their knowledge, like no big deal, but hey, 12 a day, 4 water a day, a little bit of knowledge a day, that stuff adds up, and it's cheap to add in. I also forgot to mention, every time you build another underworld headquarters, it is 1 additional tick of 1 daily hedge too, right? So that adds to your tick. You want underworld headquarters everywhere, and if you're building underworld headquarters everywhere, you have less authority to expand. I tend to try to nab the important border regions first, and then try to focus on more underworld headquarter expansion. But there is a very careful balance there that's a little tricky to figure out. It takes just time and experience. For expansion, early on in the game, we'll probably like at least 4 Thopters. You could go 3 if you could find some Thopter wrecks, crashed Ornithopter wrecks out in the desert, and send your guys out to grab them. Why do you want extra Thopters early on? Because a couple of reasons. You want to get out and you want to see what's the good territory to grab early on. If you see it before other people, you can walk there and you could get it before other people, thanks to the smuggler's superpowers. So exploring the map is very important. You want to explore other players' territories as quick as possible, because you want to, if someone has this really incredible money-making territory, you want to get as quickly as possible an underworld headquarters up there, so you could start stealing from their huge money-making territory. End of note, the things that you build don't actually steal. It's in addition to it. So they're still getting their 7 water. I'm just also producing an extra 30% of that for myself. So they don't lose the water that I'm making out of these UHQs or any of the resources. They just, I make them in addition. So they don't really lose anything by me making UHQs on them. It's purely creating new resources out of thin air for myself. Okay, what else? In the expansion, the smugglers like a bit of early bullying. Much like the Fremen, with their strong early armies, might seek to push out the enemy, the enemy borders. The smugglers, the early access to snipers and things are so powerful, they're able to do an awful lot of early bullying. If the smuggler early armies are so strong, it's hard for enemies to defeat them. The Fremen are actually surprisingly good at it still, but the smugglers can cause a lot of havoc early in the game, and pillaging other people's regions are very, very lucrative. A little pro tip for you: if you find yourself a village and you mouse over the resources tab of it here, so I just clicked on a village and there's a little resources button in the bottom left corner. If you mouse over it, it'll tell you how much that thing gets pillaged for. If I pillage Zamur here, this neutral village, I would get 1,000 Solari. That's pretty nice. If I pillage this neutral village over here that the Carino owns, I would get 1,700 Solari and 200 Plascrete. Oh, not too shabby, right? It also shows you how much they're paying in upkeep, which is relevant for one of the underworld headquarters options. Says you get paid out 10% of the village's upkeep. That's usually not useful, but if you mouse over here, you can see, okay, they're paying 39 in upkeep, so if I got 10% of that, it would be an extra 3.9, right? But if I pillaged this region, I would get 262 spice and 345 Plascrete and 2,000 Solari. Pillaging other players is extremely lucrative, so we love to do that if at all possible. Smugglers play real well as early game bullies. And pillaging players sometimes doesn't make it quite the blood feud that other things do. The Fremen might love to liberate your territories in order to pull a little extra authority out from you. The smugglers just want to pillage you and then they'll leave, right? We just want to take some money and then we'll go away. And pillaging sometimes, doesn't necessarily destroy your buildings. It just kind of lowers your economy for a little while. So you might be able to pillage people a couple times without quite getting into that blood feud territory, which you always want to avoid. You don't want blood feuds in Dune Spice Wars. You want everyone working for their own best interests, and you don't want people just trying to ruin your interests. Spice Worm just ate all my snipers. Or Spice Worm, the worm. Out for the spice. Anyways, bullying your neighbors is a very strong play with smugglers. I do recommend it. At least a little bit of bullying. For a couple of reasons, both to pillage their lands and also to boost your scavenging drones, make just killing their men worthwhile for you, because your scavenging drones will make money off of them. We'll talk about scavenging drones in a little bit, but smugglers are bullies and can and should be played that way. Okay, what else? If you're playing that unique Stakhanov counselor, you need to pay extra special attention because you want to be grabbing territory that is not bordering your other territories. So it takes a lot of extra planning. Okay, we'll take this special region, but that means I can't have this one and I can't have this one. All right, I could maybe take this region, but then I can't have this one or this one. So even extra planning if you're playing some Stakhanov, because you want to pick the highest priority or the highest. Yeah, for you have the highest priority regions, like special regions, like spice regions, or maybe a couple of special resources like a fast energy source. But if you're Stakhanov, you don't want them adjacent to other ones, or you'll lose your 20% bonus and your 100% siege bonus kind of thing. So you're trying to pick isolated areas, which can make your city planning, as it were, even a little more difficult. Let's go though. Keep going. We got lots to do. Also, for early expansion, we need to be aware of Foot in the Door as the first blue tech, which says +1 influence and +1 intel production per faction hosting at least one underworld headquarters. So what this says is after you get your first blue, you want one underworld headquarters in each of your enemies as quickly as possible, because those are nice benefits to get cooking early in the game, right? So again, you want your Thopters going out and finding people quick, and you want at least one headquarters up in everybody to take advantage of the Foot in the Door. That's part of your early expansion plans. But let's talk more economy. We can look at the individual options for our underworld headquarters. Let's look through these real quick. Typically, you like looking for anybody that's making a lot of Solari and a lot of Plascrete. This is your bread and butter, the bootleg market. This makes you a lot of money. 30% of their Solari, 30% of their Plascrete becomes Solari. So this is where you get most of your money from other people. We almost always look for good places to build bootleg markets. We often like water thieves. Anyone making, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 plus water. We would like to get 3 or more out of this probably. But water thieves is a very common one. You like to get a little extra water for sure. Smugglers want as much water as they can so they can march all across the map pillaging people. Corrupted administrators looks okay. This is the 10% of their upkeep as money. This is rarely useful. It's unlikely to pay out more than 3 or 4 or 5 Solari a day, so it's usually pretty ho-hum. I typically wouldn't get this unless you don't got a lot of other options. I would never get this to give them boosted resource production. I often would get this if I don't have anything else. This is a +2 bonus spice production for your entire empire in any way you can possibly get spice. So just stacking this is a totally fine, reasonable thing to do. Over on the red side of things, contraband caches stores up the spice that they make if it is a spice producing region, and then if you come and pillage it, it pays you out that spice, which is really great. So if the enemies have a spice field near you, this would totally be reasonable for you to put some contraband caches in it and try to raid it in order to steal that spice. That's really, really nice when it works out. Can be tricky to do, but really nice when it works out. Stealing their fuel cells, always good. If they're making fuel cells, you're happy to steal them. Scavenger caches gains 50 Solari per unit dying in the region. Usually not a big deal, except it works out incredible with the Harkonnens. The Harkonnens, because they are very likely to be oppressing their villages and causing lots of rebellions in them. If you have scavenger caches on Harkonnen villages, when they kill their rebellions, you're getting paid out for every one of the little rebels that gets killed. So scavenger cache all the Harkonnen lands. It's awesome. It makes you a ton of money. Hidden explosives is very good for someone you're about to go beat up. It damages the militia by half of their health and then disappear, and then it's gone afterwards. So if you know you're going to come in, maybe you want to try a lightning strike to get rid of this village real quick, or even if it's a full-scale war, any reason you might fight a village, doing 50% of the militia's health is usually a very useful thing to do. I like that a lot if you're going to fight them. 2% manpower, I usually skip. Not a big deal to me. Spyware, stealing 30% of their knowledge. I like this. This is a great return on investment. This is 1 upkeep. So even if someone's making a single knowledge, right? Someone makes 1 knowledge and we're going to steal 30% of that 1 knowledge, 0.3. Well, we're only paying 1 upkeep for that. And normally, if we were going to build ourselves a knowledge building, it's +1 knowledge for 13 upkeep, right? So if we're paying 1 upkeep for 0.3 knowledge, we're paying maybe 3 upkeep for 1 knowledge in that case. So it's a much better return on investment to steal other people's knowledge than it is to make your own out of plain Jane research hubs. So I like stealing knowledge if they're making any of it. I like stealing intel if they're making any of it. I don't care to gain influence if they support a bounty, because I'm not using bounties unless I really need to. I do like Landsraad standing on council opening. This can add up quite a bit over the game, but I typically wouldn't do so unless I was leaning more towards a heavy political play. But there's some neat uses for this too. You could lean really heavy into Landsraad standing generation in order to allow you to do more backstabbing, breaking of ceasefires. That's sort of an interesting thought. We could talk a little bit more about that later. The ceasefire breaking plan. Last one, dead drops extra intel for you and your allies. It's fine, but I don't worry about it. Usually I want money first, then I want other resources like water or fuel cells or whatever. Those are my plans for when I'm getting Underworld headquarters. You gotta beware your manpower when you're playing Smugglers. Usually early in the game, especially if you're planning to be aggressive, you may only have 3 or 4 regions and maybe a couple Underworld headquarters. Well, your 3 or 4 regions don't allow you to make a whole lot of recruitment offices. And if you're low on recruitment offices and you lose your army to your early aggression, you're getting a little overly aggressive. Maybe you fly too close to the sun and you get close to their main base because you're pillaging all their lands, and their main base wrecks you with a couple of missile strikes or something. Well, the Smugglers, because they have less territory, they often have a lot less opportunity to get better recruitment. So you need to be very aware of low manpower. It can be a bit of a trap. You could have your super tough army out causing trouble, and if it gets wiped, you'll have a real hard time getting it back. So I tend to put a bit of an extra emphasis on earlier recruitment offices for Smugglers, especially if I'm picking on my neighbors at all, which I usually like to do. Whew. We talked underworld planning. You can survive a bit on less Plascrete. So just as you want a bit more emphasis on the likes of recruitment offices, you could put a bit less emphasis on Plascrete. You may not even want to emphasize, everybody else would like to grab an early minerals patch for the extra 100% from their factories. You may be able to even skip it with Smugglers, right? You're going to have such a smaller amount of territory, and the territory that you have, you're not even necessarily using for big economic reasons, because a lot of your economy, again, is pillaging and other people. So you can get by with building only 2 or 3 things in your villages and living on a very light Plascrete economy for a long time. In fact, most of your Plascrete you really want funneled into building out your main base, which is very important, rather than building out your villages. So you can live on a lean Plascrete economy if you need to. And like I said, you don't even really need your villages built out that much. You kind of want, you sort of want the greatest hits, right? You want a little bit of energy reserves. You want any sort of, spice fields you can grab a hold of just in order to deny them to other people. They're not necessarily going to be your big money makers. And you really want special regions, and more for the fact that they are a lot of hegemony and they can cook hegemony with the craft workshops. Those are the things that you care about a lot for other villages. You're not really building out your villages to power your economy, right? So it's not that big of a deal what you build in them. Of course, it's nice to have a lot of money from your villages, but you can absolutely live in a negative. You can live in the red where you're losing money each day to upkeep and sustain yourself entirely by burning stuff down with pillaging. Pillaging makes you a lot of money. Let's see. We talked scavenger caches for the Harkonnens. We love those. Oh, and one special note is we really like to prioritize somewhat early in our building the Space and Guild branch, because the Wraith is so critical to the Smuggler endgame, or even the mid-game. Like I mentioned, Smugglers start very strong off the backs of Snipers being amazing, but then once you get to a mid-game, the Smuggler force can get beaten by a lot of people, especially if it's a bad angle or engagement. And your ability to kite with your snipers is a bit lessened as people's armies get much larger. So the way that the Smugglers climb back on top is near the end game, or as quickly as possible, really. You get your Wraith out, which is their flagship, which is really, really strong, maybe the strongest in the game. It has a super powerful speed debuff to enemies underneath it. And I think you can use the toxic purge to spread the gases, so they cause even more damage to everybody underneath them, and causes sort of a ticking damage underneath, like a mortis engine effect if you're from Total War. But also just the huge speed slow allows you to get back to kiting a large army. We always want to prioritize getting our Wraith up as quickly as possible, and because of that, we always want to prioritize getting our Space and Guild branch up as quickly as possible. And the trade is easy as can be. We're making tons of extra influence thanks to paying our taxes, so we just send that influence out for Guild Favor as quickly as possible, and before we know it, we'll have the Guild Favor to get up our Wraith. And if we're making a lot, then we can kind of be pretty aggressive with our Wraith, and if it dies, we just make ourselves a new one. No big deal. But we always want to prioritize that super fast Space and Guild branch. And the other stuff is no big deal. We love military factories. They're expensive, but extra damage is very, very useful for us. I usually don't even end up getting the likes of an experimental furnace. It's rare that I've got the land that I want to boost up with it, and it's rare that I necessarily have the extra fuel cells to do so I don't bother with that. Nuke silos, always fun. Strong recommend if you've got the extra fuel and the extra money laying around. But I wouldn't build a research station. Yeah. Mostly I care about getting my Space and Guild up. Okay, let's talk developments. We've been beating around the bush. Let's get into the nitty gritty here. I think there's a pretty clear path here. For me, it starts out composite materials right away to get a little extra plascrete cooking in the early game, and maintenance centers are always useful. Then I go straight over to survival training up to organized looting, both because the early armory developments are quite good, and organized looting is a payout of a big chunk, 30% more anytime you're pillaging things. And because you'll be pillaging stuff constantly, all the time, this is a big economic boost. It also unlocks the scavenger drone, which is an extremely good unit. We'll talk about that when we get to the units, but scavenger drones are great and we want them as quickly as possible. In this game, the second territory I took was an energy source. I immediately built a fuel cell factory and I immediately got a scavenger drone out right away. They're that important to rush. It could be like your fourth unit practically. Most other factions sort of don't care about their drones quite the way that we do with the Smugglers, but scavenger drones are awesome. So after I go up to organized looting, I usually go over to either Foot in the Door or maybe Criminal Barons. You kind of want both pretty quickly. Criminal Barons makes Underworld headquarters cheaper and pays out a tiny bit of water if you get them. Foot in the Door makes it so that you are incentivized to get those first 3 up super quick. It also makes them cheaper to install on people that you're truced with, which is kind of a nice little benefit. And it also gives you agent recruitment speed, which we also want a ton of. Since I like to play Lashan Hara, who's paying me out extra resources for information levels on any fields, I also really love spying logistics pretty quickly to get even faster agent recruitment speed. Also, intelligent agency is a pretty solid building, but faster agent recruitment speed is, the quicker I can get more of my agents out to put on stuff, to get my levels up, to get extra income, it all just sort of synergizes really nicely. But after your organized looting, after your 1 or 2 in each of these places, it gets a little more interesting. You got some things to think about. Lay of the land is always good. You'll have less controlled villages, but you are going to want more knowledge, so it's tricky. I usually like Lay of the Land. I think it's good. It also unlocks research agreement treaties, which are very, very valuable. Most other people will almost always agree to a research agreement with you, in my experience. So that's super valuable in and of itself. You kind of want the whole green tree, and you could kind of live without the yellow tree, which is sort of unique to this faction, right? The yellow tree is boosting up your spice bonuses or a lot of the stuff that you're making in your villages, but again, we're not leaning on too much from our villages. And the green tree lets us lean into our underworld headquarters a bit more, as well as our pillaging lifestyle, which is where our real economic benefits come from. Native customs is whatever, but illicit methods is a very important, unique tech for the smugglers. This makes it so that all that land you've been pillaging the whole game, well, you don't suffer any penalty to annex it back now. So if you can freely pillage things to your heart's content, and then if you end up wanting them later, you can take it with no penalty. While other people, if they're pillaging, basically lock themselves out from being able to take that, with the exception of the Harkonnens. So we like illicit methods if we get to the point where we want to take anything that we want to be pillaging. Like I mentioned earlier, we really like fast, valuable trinkets in order to keep up with that hedge game, and make extra profit out of those quick special regions that we captured early in the game. I think a nice to have is all the way down to border defenses for extra missile batteries to defend your far-flung empire. Really, really valuable, really strong in the defense. Nice to have is Wonders of the Desert, which makes those special regions even cheaper and also gives them a nice resource production boost. Very, very nice to have, actually, especially in an end game scenario where maybe you're taking specials off someone else because you're attacking them, or maybe someone died and now all of their specials are up for grabs. Wonders of the Desert would make them quite a bit cheaper, so that's super, super valuable there. But typically I'm filling out a lot of my green tree, and I'm coming back and I'm filling out a lot of my red tree. Guerrilla Tactics is a unique one that makes your military units deal 20% more damage and run 20% faster outside of combat at nighttime, which is really unique and really fun. So nighttime fights are to the benefit of the smugglers. I believe nighttime happens every 12 days and then lasts for 3 days, something like that. So it's what is it? 1/5 of the time, 1/3 of the 3 days out of 15, 1/5 of the time is nighttime, I think. Really useful. Pretty cool, and just the plus 15 water is a tremendous amount of water, allowing you to go sort of anywhere you want. Industrial scavenging is another incredible unique tech. It makes it so that scavenging drone that you already made early on is now making your entire army 30% cheaper to upkeep. Wow, so good. It also unlocks a second gear slot in your army, which is critical. You wanted to do that anyways. And it unlocks fusion plants. Maybe if you didn't have any close fuel cells for your scavenging drone, you go straight up to industrial scavenging, build your fusion plant, and that will pay out the fuel cells that you need for your early scavenging drones. As usual, we always want the stuff down the right-hand side for the extra training slots, extra command points, totally critical. Even the synchronized heist benefits are almost negligible. On completing a siege, units can move a little faster, or if you have multiple sieges underway, you pillage faster. Totally forgettable. That hardly even matters. What we care about is the 10 command points. Siege incentives, also kind of important, because we like a base kill. I'm going to show you guys a base kill at the end, near the end of this, because the smugglers do it so well. The other nice to haves: spying mastery, really nice to have extra agents, especially again if you're like Lashan Hara, where your intelligence levels are giving you extra stuff. Spying mastery is really, really nice. If you want to murder someone, you got to go up and get nefarious contacts for cheaper assassins and extra infiltration cells. Smugglers, really, really good at murdering people. Maybe less good than Vernius, but maybe more good. Maybe more better. Smugglers, excellent assassin faction. They can get up 3 infiltration cells. I even forgot to talk about the major underworld headquarters. We'll come back to those in a second. But one of the major underworld headquarters allows them to build a a building that gives them even a 4th infiltration cell. So Smuggler is the only faction in the game that can have 4 infiltration cells up, except for Vernius, who could theoretically have more, but don't worry about them. Super good at assassins if you go down this right-hand side of the blue tree. Of note, the security details is kind of fun as well. Receive 4 free mercenaries after a resolution choice marked by a bounty passes, and then an extra agent in counterintelligence. Now that's cool because extra agents in counterintelligence will keep us from being assassinated. That's always nice. People love to assassinate the smugglers because their empires tend to be very far-flung, and you got a space over here and over here and over here. It's really, really difficult to search all of your lands in time as the smugglers. So if you're getting assassinated, you oftentimes will need to abandon stuff in order to survive. So maybe it's extra useful to have that 3rd guy on counterintelligence with security details. The other fun part of this is the 4 free mercenaries that you get. Well, mercenaries have a benefit. Can I get a mercenary right now? I don't know if I have enough. Let me look. Okay, I'm at 10%. Let me give it to some guys here. Let's look at a mercenary real quick. If we get a mercenary out, and we would get 4 of these for free if a bounty passed. Now, I told you not to do bounties, but you might do them anyways because they're fun. If you put a bounty on something and a bounty passes, you will get you'll make everyone else rich. You'll get whatever you wanted to be bountied, and you'll get 4 free mercenaries. Well, interestingly, mercenaries say refunds half the cost on disbanding, and they cost 800, right? So we're at 173. If we disband this mercenary, it pays us $400. Isn't that cool? Because we didn't even have to pay for them in the first place. So we got 4 mercenaries. We get 1,600 free Solari if a bounty passes. So it's sort of like we're getting paid for the bounties passing. That's kind of a neat little trick there. If you want to push the politics and you're using bounties in order to make yourself get elected to things or make things come in your favor, well, go ahead and grab yourself security details and make yourself an extra 1,600 Solari every time a bounty passes by taking your mercenaries and disbanding them for the cash. Neat little trick there. The other thing really of note is Tinker Teams is kind of cool for trafficking stations. So we haven't talked about these yet. If you are adjacent to someone else's land, and I'm not here, if you're adjacent to someone else's land that is making spice, the trafficking station is a unique building that steals 20% of the spice production. Now this is properly stealing. It takes it away from them and gives it to you. And it gives a big chunk of their region's spice production as Solari to you, and it reduces the amount of spice that they make. So you don't get their spice, you just get it straight as money injected into your economy. This is really fun because it hurts your neighbors and it helps you. People hate it, but it's very fun and funny to have up and running. The other one that's really cool is Underworld Contacts. Says that if you build an Underworld headquarters in any village that's making spice, you will get an additional 20% of that village's spice income. So if you're pushing a hard economic play, this is super useful. You can come out, you can build Underworld headquarters, and boom, you're pulling in 20% of whatever they're making. So that's a nice economic boom for you. But if you wanted to emphasize the other stuff, and you weren't leaning for like a Chome type economic victory, I think you're fine ignoring an awful lot of the yellow stuff. Obviously, if you are making crazy money and everybody else is poor, you do want this yellow stuff, especially up to Chome support, especially up to Underworld Contacts, in order to make even more money, even more spice, and get that cheaper spice Chome share buying price. Really important if you're trying to play the economic game, but if you're not, if you're playing a more aggressive, fighty, expansion hedge game, I think you can ignore a lot of the yellow in favor of other fun stuff. Okay, what are we talking? I think that's about all we need to know on developments. Start with composite materials, go up to organized looting, and then we start grabbing the green stuff and the blue stuff that we like, with an emphasis on a lot of the good green stuff. Let's talk main base build. No, we're going to talk the major Underworld headquarters. So once you get to, 10K, you can build major Underworld headquarters. So you can go to people's main bases, Siege Tabar here, and you get 2 slots in their bases to build special things. You can produce spice for each active harvester they have. That's really, really useful. And in this case, the Fremen are on at least 4 spice, maybe even 5 if they've got that one. So you could find someone who's got a ton of spice, and boom, you just earned yourself, if they're on 5 spice, we just made 70 spice a day for this. On our 3 spice regions right now, we're only making 100, so that would almost double the amount of spice that we make. Spice traffickers, super strong if someone is an economic powerhouse with a lot of spice coming in. Contraband Hub pays out more resources for pillaging their villages. That's very fun, but usually by the time you're up to 10k, you're probably not rampaging through someone's empire pillaging their stuff. By then, their army is very much likely able to fight or defend themselves a bit more. The pillaging parades tend to happen a bit earlier in the game, I think. But if you are pillaging them, that's super valuable. Last one, you get an extra $30 a day for every yellow district they have. If they've got 3 built up in their main base, you'd get, and it only counts for 1 single district. So you really are looking for someone that has 3 yellows built, and then you would get 90 Solari a day. It's a great deal. The other one, the red ones are really good. Hidden explosives, this is your base killer. You install this on someone you're going to try and kill. It lowers the armor of their base when you go to fight them. Beacon network. If you're going to be hardcore at war with someone, it makes it so anytime you're in their territory, you guys get armor. That's pretty cool. And the last one that's really important, weapons dealers. You're looking for anyone in the game with 3 red building out, and you build your weapons dealers. This will count as a plus 15% power for all of your military based on them having a 3 reds built. So that is critical. You're looking to get a weapons dealers up every single game because that's a big, big power boost. There were blue ones too. Let's look at the blue ones real quick. Whispers, this is the extra infiltration cell, so you can get up to a 4th cell on someone. If you're going to try and murder someone, you want your Whispers hub. Scheme Lodge is sort of interesting. It allows them to get custom smuggler-themed quests that show up, and if they do that quest, they get like a little benefit, and then doing so also pays you a big chunk of intel. So that's kind of nice. If you don't have anything better to do, you've gotten a lot of your other good stuff built out, I kind of throw in a Scheme Lodge just for fun. Finally, an activist headquarters is really useful if someone has 3 blue districts. It gives you an extra 40 influence for each one, so if they've got 3, it's a 120 bonus influence cap. Because we're making such an outrageous amount of influence, 21 a day is a huge income. A bigger influence cap is really important in allowing us to contest other people in the Landsrad or grab stuff we want in the Landsrad. Strongly recommend. Don't forget about those. They open up at 10k and they're so strong you want them up pretty much right away as soon as you can. Very, very powerful economically, powerful militarily. Let's go back. Let's talk about our own main base. Our own main base, I think, is fairly simple. This is not necessarily how I would do it. I probably do 3 red and then 2 red, and then I have probably 3 blue and 1 yellow. So I start with an administrative hall, almost always. I just really like authority production. And if I didn't make the administrative hall, my first one, or always my second one, would probably be the research center. We need extra knowledge to get all the goodies that we want, and we don't necessarily have a good knowledge income to begin with, so anything extra we can get is good. And we need extra hegemony. Remember, we talked about we're likely behind in the hedge game right off the bat, so this extra research center will power us through a little extra that we get for paying our spice tax. It'll power our early craft shops to make them 15% better, again, to help us catch up in that race and be a late game player in it. You don't want other people contesting hegemony when you're still like 10k behind, because you're not going to catch up to them, right? And you can always, if you're too far ahead or you're making people too nervous, you could always destroy your research center and you'll fall back in hegemony because it's given you that retroactive amount based on your controlled regions. But we really like a research center as a second base, and I probably put it in one of my 1 slots down here, not in my 2 slot, especially if I'm playing Lashan. If I'm not playing Lashan, maybe I do a 2 slot, but if I am playing Lashan, we're getting so much intel and influence that I don't care about the Senate Envoys bonus here. I would probably rather have the Master Armors for 2 reds. What do we get for the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th one? I don't know. military stuff, you probably want your 3 reds up relatively quickly. Extra health goes a long way towards boosting your very, very fragile army. Extra health, extra armor. So I start with Administrative Hall, I go into Research Center. After that, kind of depends on how I feel. In this case, because we went basically no yellow tech, we can't even really build any of the yellow districts, so I haven't built much of in the way of yellow stuff. Critical is getting your research center up, getting your admin hall, getting your 3 red, and then you can kind of fill out the rest to taste, right? I like 2 red in here as well. All red buildings is good because I like to play a bully play style. I'm not worrying about too much of my economy here because I'm just fueling it from pillaging things. So I'm happy to go into a lot of blue stuff for extra utility. Like intelligence agency is great. Faster agent recruitment speeds, again, to fill out our agent slots. Extra operation slots is useful because we have a lot of good operations we like to keep on hand for the smugglers. Embassy is really great. Extra Landsrad standing, like we said, helping to propel you, helping to be a catch-up mechanic because you join the Landsrad late. It can often, if you want to be able to contest stuff, you need to get as much standing as quickly as possible so that you can get up to the higher levels. Landsrad standing is also useful if you want to buy Chome, because being at higher Landsrad standing is reduces the Chome buying price. So even if you're going economic to a Chome type victory, you want as much Landsrad as you can get. And this is also the treaty bonus. If you're able to convince people to give you trade treaties or other treaties, having the embassy will boost that up. So I like an embassy a lot. All the red stuff is good, of course. What else do we care about, really? Let me talk about the unique one. So the unique one is the Black Market branch, which is +1% spice, plascrete, manpower, and intel production per underworld headquarters. That's pretty good. It's not going to do a whole lot early in the game, but if you do it in the end game when you've got, I don't know, 15, 20 underworld headquarters up, an extra 15, 20% to all those things is pretty good. It's not game breaking. It's not a huge must have in my opinion, but it's pretty good. We kind of like it. Chome branch, and so the economic stuff, maybe if we grabbed a lot of spice fields, maybe if we're choming hard, and I don't like to play them as chomers, but they can kind of do it. Maybe if we have the yellow tech, we like a chome branch. We probably don't particularly care about a Mason's Guild. Maybe a Harvester works if we've got a lot of spice fields. And you always want to avoid the recycling vats and try and get your water elsewhere. That's what we care about on our main base. Let's see. Let's talk the merry men, the operations units, armory, all that good stuff. Smugglers have some really cool and good operations. All of them are great and unique. Poison the reserves is if the enemy is losing supply, they're slowed and they take a small ticking health damage. So this is your defensive one. So if enemies come into your land, they'll start losing supply. You poison the reserves and now you can kite them because it's a big slow. Now this gets countered. If they do a supply drop, they're no longer losing supply, so they are no longer losing their speed too. So it's not a silver bullet here. If the enemy's savvy, they can counter it. But this is 100 intel to get ready, so you always have this ready and you always use it just in the chance that it might be useful. Again, it aids to our kiting kind of play style where we're going to take a shot, walk backwards, take a shot, walk backwards kind of thing. The second one is the extraction network. The extraction network is really cool. So if we are causing trouble and we're running around and we're fighting people, maybe we get caught out and the enemy's coming to get us and we're overmatched and we're far away from home. Well, if you put an extraction network on a village, it makes this little circle around it, and then whenever you walk people into that circle, boom, they teleport back to your home base. Super, like instantly, right away. You can use this on any village in the game. I could be over here fighting the Harkonnens. I find out I'm in trouble. I extraction network here. Boom, teleports me right back to my home base. Saves my army to fight again another day. Extraction network at 200 intel, 200 solari, a total steal. A lot of fun to have up, especially if you're playing aggressively. It will protect you from making mistakes, as it is just this insurance that allows you to get back home if you need it. The last unique one that we have is communication jamming for 500 Solari, 500 Intel. Blocks all operations in the region. And critical to know is it cancels all operations in the region as well. Maybe it's time to kill the Atreides, and the Atreides see you coming and they're going to ceasefire you. Well, you communication jam their ceasefire and you cancel it and you continue killing the Atreides, going on your merry way with your merry men. Communications jamming is super powerful. Maybe the Harkonnens are coming in with their death army and they're going to use 4 or 5 operations and try and wipe you out. Well, you communication jam them so they no longer have their drugs, they no longer have their sleeper agents, and their armies are a lot weaker. Comm jams are so strong. Underappreciated, actually. One of the strongest things in the game because it allows you to turn the tables. A lot of folks will rely on operations to win critical fights or to dissuade certain things. Everybody else has, not everybody else, but many other people have super strong things. Think Carino orbital strikes, which normally would completely wipe out your very fragile snipers. Well, you just comm jam and you cancel their orbital strikes, right? It's a great thing. Comm jam, super strong, super good. We like it a lot. The other thing of note is Scav Team. I mean, I talk about Scav Teams a lot, but it bears repeating. Scav Teams is very good for the snipers. Or not the snipers, yes, the smugglers. Most people use Scav Teams in order to convert the 25% of a unit's health into money. So you use this when you fight guys and you get money for it. But also, don't forget, it says plus 20% resources from pillaging a village. Well, we're going to be doing a lot of pillaging. If we have Lashan Hara, or even for most of the smugglers are going to have a pretty decent intel income, well, don't let that intel go to waste. Use it to just spam Scav Teams everywhere. Spam the Scav Team, kill the militia, get some money for it, pillage the village, get some money for it, prep yourself into the Scav Team. Use Scav Teams all the time. Extra boost, extra sauce for your economy. We like them a lot. Whew, those are most of the other operation we really like is, of course, defense breaches for killing bases, but we'll talk about that when we get to the base killing section coming up shortly here. Let's talk units for our merry men. The general gist of smuggler units is fragile but powerful. I gotta wait a second here to make my wrecker because I think he got eaten by a worm. Let's talk scavengers. Scavengers, probably the worst trooper in the game. Probably not very good at their jobs. They're just sort of guys that are there to hopefully be a bit of a speed bump while everyone else gets the job done. These are your tankiest units. You usually need like 2 or 3 of these on the front line to absorb some bullets. They're kind of weak, they kind of have low armor, they get a little bit more if something dies, so usually you want your snipers to pick something off as quickly as possible so that your scavengers get some basic armor up and can live a little longer. The real meat and potatoes of your army is, of course, the snipers. Extremely high damage, relatively low attack speed, extremely high range, ignores a lot of enemies' armor. We'll talk about it a little bit when we get to army compositions, but your army is majority snipers who are doing the majority of your work, and you got to keep them safe. Don't let them get killed. Wreckers are an interesting unit. Usually you carry 1 or 2 wreckers with your guys because they don't really do damage, but they're sort of debuffers. So we like wreckers because they're grenadiers, so their attacks deal an area damage. It's not very much damage, but importantly, it does area debuffing as well. Anything they hit loses 2 armor. That's good. And then you'll have their special bonus is anything they hit also will lose 20% of their speed. Again, that's good for being able to kite things. And there's extra armory bonuses we'll talk about in a second as well. Even more debuffs to apply to them. The scavenging drone, I mentioned it before, we love scavenging drones. Why? Because anytime someone dies in this great big circle, you can kind of see it here. There's a great big circle around the scavenging dome. Anytime anyone in that circle dies, you get 1 bonus loot scavenged. And your loot scavenged, when you take it back to one of the villages you control, will pay out 75 Solari for every one you've scavenged. Let's find ourselves a village. We've got 18 loot scavenged here. Let's take this drone back to one of our friendly villages. So this is, you get this from killing militia, from killing raiders, from killing other players. Boom, he just got paid out 1,300 Solari by walking back to the village delivering some loot. It's this really excellent, because you're already walking around doing so much killing of militia and pillaging and fighting and stuff as the smugglers, getting paid even more for every guy you kill is just the icing on top of the cake. So we really like rushing a scav drone and getting paid extra money for all the work we're doing. And in addition to that, scav drones are just good. They've got a decent armor. They've got a ton of hit points. They've got an okay attack. You could totally have an army that is like 2 scav drones and then all snipers behind them. Have your scav drones eat some hits. Have the snipers kill whatever is out there. Scav drones super good. We want 1, and if we've got 1, we've probably got enough fuel cells to get 2. If we've got 2, then we could totally take our army and send half over here to pillage, take the other drone and go half over here to pillage, and we could be pillaging twice as many things, twice as fast. If that makes sense to you, it's a good thing to do. The other really interesting unit is the Free Company. So a lot of folks, the Free Company being their elite unit, a lot of factions have their elite unit as big, tough, tanky dudes. Not so much for the Smugglers. The Free Company are your flankers. They don't have any armor at all. They've got a decent chunk of health, but they're somewhat fragile. They are not your frontline fighters. These are your backline fighters. You want to sneak around the enemy and wipe out the enemy's backline. And the way they do that is by having an outrageous damage potential. Free Company have an extremely high attack speed and a pretty high power as well. And then they get even more power if the target that they're attacking has low armor, 3 or less. The Free Company are capable of outrageous amounts of damage, maybe the highest DPS of any unit in the game. Without some ridiculous buffs. You know, I guess a Knight Champion probably does more. Maybe a fully sauced up Executioner with like 100 things dead around it does more. But baseline, Free Company put out outrageous amounts of damage, but can die as well. So again, Smugglers, high damage, low survivability, this glass cannon kind of stuff. Free Company are really good. We don't rely on them too much because they are going to struggle with higher armor units. That's where your snipers come in. But against low armor units, Free Company are invaluable. Super strong, super killers. They're great. Let's talk a couple of unique units, actually. I don't think I have one up right now. Let's get a Banshee up. We've got a Wraith, which we talked about a little bit more. Super strong, incredibly strong flagship. Damages everything underneath it. You could pop it to make it work even better. Damages everything underneath it. Slows everything underneath it. A really powerful game changer. For those big blob fights. Lets you single-handedly turn what might seem like a massacre into a win in your favor just by this thing sort of floating overhead, killing everything underneath it. And not your own units, only all the enemy's units. The Wraith's incredibly strong. A lot of tough armies like Fremen, like ECAS and stuff, which maybe are a little less on the ranged units, are relying more on melee, suffer hugely standing underneath the Wraith. The Wraith is the great endgame equalizer. We love the Wraith. We always get the Wraith. We worship the Wraith. Of special note is the Banshee, which I was down on for a while until someone told me some hidden dark jujitsu of the Banshees. We're gonna get one up here in a second. And I'll show you, I think we got an opportunity here. The Banshee does a super high DPS again, but can only attack flying units, which is not too useful. It's stealthed outside of combat, so it's sneaky, you don't see it coming. But critically, the Banshee says attacks from stealth apply a speed and attack speed debuff. And it ignores half of the enemy's armor in addition, but their damage is super high with a pretty decent attack speed. So they're really great anti-air. But one thing that's really fun to do with the Banshee, credit to Carletto for talking about this one, you take your Banshee, and if you're at war with someone, you use your Banshee to hunt down all of their Thopters. And because the first attack slows them down, the Thopter can't get away from you, so you can chase the Thopter down. And this one was easier because it was at their base. Here's another one. We go on here, we get this Thopter. Oh, we weren't stealthed for that one, so he might get away. You can get one Banshee up relatively early in the game, and you can use it to hunt down all of the enemy's Thopters across the map. And it works hilariously well. And people don't usually kill Thopters too much, so you don't realize how annoying this is. But imagine you're taking your Thopter, you go to each of the enemy's spice fields, you kill the Thopter that is above their harvesters, and now they're not on safe mode, and now the worms come up and eat their harvesters. You kill all of their Thopters that are flying around the map, and now they just can't see the map, or they've got to keep making new ones and setting them out. It's hilariously annoying to do. Also, snipers are really good at killing thopters as well. Anytime there's a thopter flying over, you should take your snipers and just blow it out of the sky real quick. It sucks to lose your thopters, and it's really funny to kill for other people. So, kind of useful, kind of just a troll, but be aware that Banshees hunting thopters is very funny. Very, very funny. We like it a lot. If nothing else, it's really gonna annoy other people. But it makes me giggle, right? It's so funny. If you're coming out of stealth, the debuff on him is pretty long. You can almost always hunt him down. You wait for there's another one coming out. You wait for the stealth to kick back in again, and then you go hunt another thopter. I'm spending too much time on it, but it makes me laugh. All right, use your banshees to hunt thopters or other air units, which there usually aren't too many of, but hunting thopters alone is funny. Probably not necessarily worth it for 4 CP and 21 upkeep, but again, it's super fun. Banshees, not necessarily good, but necessarily fun. Let's talk Armory. I think the Armory upgrades are pretty straightforward for smugglers. For your scavengers, you get 20% damage healed, or 20% of their damage inflicted gets healed. It's kind of ho-hum, but it's okay. And you get the armor plus armor minus power, because all you want your scavengers to do is to die slowly. Chasing stance to further slow the target enemy's speed is actually okay, but not that big a deal. I don't hate it, but I don't usually get it. Dismantling tools ignores half of mechanical units and buildings' armor. I guess if you're in a real blood feud with House Vernius, maybe you grab the dismantling tools. Otherwise, it's no big deal. Just try and keep your scavengers alive as much as possible. Wreckers are more interesting. We like the stinging gas. It lowers their power more, but it adds another debuff to make their targets take more damage. We like the traumatic repeater. Again, it's another debuff. It damage enemy units with less than 50% health suffer an additional -1 armor. So even more debuffs that you can apply in an AoE attack. Couple of wreckers tossing out debuffs to slow people down is really great. Extra attack range is okay. You can get it if you want to. It helps them to kite with the snipers because they can attack at long range like the snipers can, but otherwise not that big a deal. Extra damage, no big deal. These guys don't do a lot of damage either. Your snipers do your damage, so we want the damage buffs for them. We get propelling ammo for +5 power. We get recursive lens for extra damage to slowed units, and the units will be slowed thanks to our poison reserves, thanks to our wreckers, thanks to our wraith, maybe something else. Recursive lens, super useful. Distorting umbrellas, taking less damage from air units, that's never useful. Whistling ammo, doing more damage to air units. Maybe if you really needed to shoot down a mothership in record time, you could switch to that, but it's most of the time not very useful. Scab drones. Scab drones are pretty interesting. We really love 5 intel when delivering loot, right? An extra intel income in addition to the Solari income we're getting. I always grab a shock dampener first. Other one I like is motivational cash box. Anytime you're getting loot, it's a relatively brief attack speed buff for your whole army around it. This is quite useful. Pretty good. We like the motivational cash box a lot. It's a DPS boost for the whole army. Very good. You can also make it stealth, but that's no big deal. It's already quite tough. You could also give it the Shield Straightener, which is an active ability that allows you to spend the loot that you've been gathering to put extra armor on the units around you. This is good, but sort of tricky to use and make useful. I don't often get it, but I could imagine someone might. Free company. I like free company with stealth gear. Makes them can't be seen outside of combat and really makes that flanking role a lot easier to accomplish when you're invisible. And I also like the dismantling tools. Ignore half of mechanical units and buildings armor. Ignoring buildings armor and stealth and high single target DPS. Do you smell what I'm cooking here? These are your base killers. The free company. A very, very valid tactic for the smugglers is to make 13 free company and just go kill someone's base before they can do anything about it, right? That is awesome. Let's talk unit compositions and then we'll show you a base kill. For an army composition, you typically want 2 or 3 scavengers kind of to maybe hold the front line a little bit, put up a token frontline resistance, maybe make the enemy attack them first before they try to micro onto your snipers. We like some wreckers to slow the enemy down and spread debuffs. We like as many snipers as we can possibly get to shoot and kill the enemy, and your micro is really you double click your snipers to select them all. You shoot the enemy and you take a step back. I don't know if this will be relevant or not. Let's go shoot some guys over here. So we start this fight. You shoot this guy, and everyone takes a step back. You shoot the next guy, take a step back, shoot the next guy, and like that's sort of how the kiting style works, right? You shoot, you take a step back, you shoot, you take a step back. All your other guys are in the way, causing trouble. We, like I said, we like 2 wreckers, we like tons of snipers, we like 1 or 2 scavenger drones. You could definitely get away with 1. They're a little expensive at 5 CP. I would probably have 2 in early mid-game in order to do sort of spread my army out and do extra pillaging. I probably only have 1 in my end game army. Free company, we like a lot of free company. Probably 3 or 4 to do that kind of flanker job. You could do 5 or 6, maybe if you have a lot of flanking that you'd like to do, or if you want to do that base kill, you want as many free company as you can get. Banshees if you want to hunt down ornithopters and be a real jerk. Wraith always 100% of the time as quickly as you could possibly get it. Let's do a base kill. What does a base kill look like for the smugglers? Well, somewhere in here I saved a base kill game. So this is actually the same game, slightly earlier. Carino aggressively base dropped me, and I thought, hell no, Carino, not in my tutorial video. So I made myself 13 free company. I went into this Imperial base, I put a hidden explosives, I prepared myself with a siege incentives to do extra damage, and we also got defense breaches up. And we're at peace with them. Peace is critical because the bonus for betraying someone is plus 20% damage to the betrayed faction. So it's an extra damage bonus on top of all of our other damage bonuses. So we will betray House Carino. We will drop our defense breaches on them, our supply drop just to give us a little extra, and then we're going to make sure that a single guy is close and taking the missile strike, while the other guys, the big pack, are not. And look at this base melt. How much time is this taking? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is this like maybe 20, 30 seconds to kill a base here? The missile's not even going to kill one guy. I could even take this guy and walk him away so he doesn't die. This guy will live. Boom, the base is dead. How long was that? Not freaking long at all, boys. That is an entire dead base. You could do that to anyone in the game. These guys are invisible. When these guys are out of combat, they're invisible. If you've got supplies and water, you could walk all the way across the world, walk up to the Harkonnens base where they didn't see you coming because you're invisible, and if you've got yourself 30 seconds and what is it called? A defense breach, boom. You can kill them if they're not at home. If they're busy, if they're far away from an airfield, you can snipe a base like no one's business. Oh, it's crazy. It's so fun when it works. Smugglers are a lot of fun because so many of their benefits, their versatility, oftentimes we talk about how if someone gets killed and knocked out of the game, it breaks so many of these win conditions wide open. Suddenly someone could push for a governor rush because there's less people to stop them. Suddenly someone could chow them up to victory because all that dead guy's shares went back on the market. Or the smugglers who have a hard time getting the proper amount of hegemony to win the game, suddenly they could hedge real well if someone's dead because you can take all of the special regions that someone had. Remember that the smugglers don't pay any penalty for annexing stuff that's far away. So if I kill Carino, I could come in here and I could annex this territory that used to be Carino's for, I could pick and choose just the very best territory to annex back for myself. It's really strong to kill someone as the smugglers. I like it a lot. It's so much fun. I strongly recommend it, again, because you can take advantage of it more than most people can. So smuggler kills are very strong. Let's talk the King Richard chapter, the end game win conditions. We like our fast craft workshops because it's usually going to be the likes of a hegemony that ends most games. At least these days, in this patch, the meta could always shift around, patches can always shift around. These days, we're always concerned about hegemony, so that's why, like we mentioned earlier, we focused on very fast craft workshops. We put a strong emphasis on capturing special regions, and even then, we're going to struggle to be the first one in the end game that gets to the hedge sort of threshold. Usually, the snipers win games by being the second place guy, the submarine faction that's gonna sneak in and get it done while everyone else is dealing with another threat. Let's see if we can kill another base here, just out of curiosity. Can I just walk up and kill this base? Let's see. There's a whole army here. Can the Carino army stop me from getting killed? Okay, so they're defending this army, and the missiles are hitting my main force. So this is a very suboptimal engagement. And look, we're already at 50%. We're gonna run out of water and die soon. But this was totally half-hearted, and we're gonna have them down to 30%. So I just make 13 more guys, and I walk out here and I kill this base. And then it's game over for Carino. Right? They even had an army defending it, and they lost 70% of their base. Oh, I love it. Domination works really well with the smugglers. You're absolutely able to like base snipe someone if they don't see it coming, and then everyone's like, "Oh, well, that's crazy. Someone just died." And while everyone's like, "Wow, that's crazy. How'd that guy die?" You could just walk over and do it to someone else's base, right? If you're in a lobby that's not aware of the power of the smuggler base snipe, that's not prepared to do like a fast reaction deal with that kind of thing, you could absolutely do a domination victory just by killing everybody in the game, and that would be also hilarious. So I recommend it. Typically, you're only going to kill one guy and then try and get the strength off of that. Like we mentioned earlier, Governor is absolutely on the table with the smugglers due to their very high influence production. If you were going to Governor, you would be putting a strong emphasis on the +1 Landsrad standing per council opening propaganda cells from as early in the game as possible. You would put a strong emphasis on embassies early in the game as possible. Your limiting factor is probably going to be your access to your Landsrad standing, which everyone else is going to have a rung up on you because you don't even start until you're at 5k hegemony. So you need to emphasize getting as much Landsrad standing as possible, so truces and treaties with everybody, and then have the influence roll in, and you might be able to get yourself, you're often going to be able to win a lot of early offices if you want to invest in bounties on them. People won't care. Now, if you get to the point where you're getting Speaker of the Council or governorship, people may stop following your bounties and giving you those things for free. But I would say if you bounty like the likes of Eye of the Council or Judge or Water Sellers, you will always be able to win those. And having one charter will make you eligible for the governorship if you've got enough Landsrad. So you can do a pretty sneaky gov play. And again, that works extra good if someone's dead, because suddenly there's that's 30% of the votes in the lobby that are no longer able to stop you. So it's very viable to kill someone either via assassination with your 4 cells or via the base snipes, and then try and push for a governor win. That's tricky. It's probably still easier to try to push for a hegemony win after that. But governor is on the table. Assassination's really strong against everyone. You don't have, like I said, you don't have any special assassin jujitsu other than you can put 4 cells on someone, which is quite a lot of cells. Let's see what else. Oh, you know why we didn't win that fight? Because we didn't have the hidden explosives on the base. I bet if we had the hidden explosives, that would be a dead base. You should note that if you have nuclear weapons are a armor drop if you use them on enemy bases, which would even further incentivize the strength, further lean into the strengths of your high DPS free company. So nuke a base, then hit it, and it'll die even faster than it would the other ways. Yeah, you can do anything. The smugglers are great. Strong gov pushes, strong assassins. Okay, hedge takes some work, but you can do it. Strong base killing. Is there anything else? Strong choming. Yeah, you could absolutely just chome to victory, my man. 100%. Especially in a poor lobby, you're unlikely, if there's other people around that are are major earners, the likes of we got a ceasefire, but that's okay, we will just betray it. Let's talk betraying ceasefires. Obviously, betraying a ceasefire is strong because it gives you that extra 20% that we talked about. So betraying ceasefires is actually extra strong even early in the game. This one didn't go as well. I wonder why. I didn't have defense breaches this time around. Early in the game, before you have your 5,000 hegemony to join the council, maybe if you're bullying someone early on and they manage to ceasefire or peace you, you can break. You can take the betrayal penalty. The big penalty to becoming a traitor is a huge loss in Landsrad standing. But if you're not even in the Landsrad yet, that's not that big of a penalty. You'd lose a little influence, you'd lose a little of the spice exchange rate, and you get a big boost to your damage. Well, that's no big deal. So if you're doing that early game bullying, don't be afraid to betray someone before you're in the Landsrad. That can be super strong. You might be able to absolutely wreck someone and practically knock them out of the game before you're even at 5k, and just by betraying them and using the strengths of your fast early army. We forgot to talk heroes. Let's talk heroes real quick. The super aggressive fast early fighting hero is Banerjee here. We like Banerjee because units can regenerate in villages with underworld headquarters that are not in combat. So if you put an underworld headquarters in an enemy village and you went and then pillaged that village, when that village is no longer in combat, you guys can just stand in that village and you could get your health and your supply back by standing there, right? That's pretty cool. Also power and armor outside of smuggler territories. We like that a lot. Banerjee is super good for that aggressive play style. He ties people down, slows them a little bit in melee. That's another big deal. And then the special ability is summons two scavengers, those basic tank guys. Just summons them out of thin air. They cost CP, so you gotta have space in your army for him. But if you're out in the field and having some attrition, losing your frontline units, he can just summon new frontline units. Banerjee is your high aggression early combat dude. He's cool. Drisk is your sniper hero. She is a more defensive hero, but can still be played aggressively. Gives you a long-range stealth detection, useful if lots of stealth Fremen are sneaking up on you. Drisk makes it so if you use an operation, all of your units are stealthed in that territory that you used operations on. Super cool and flavorful, makes all your snipers stealth, so you just pop out of stealth and start blasting guys. It's great. Owned ground units without any target receive minus 30% damage. Not that big a deal, but in theory, while you're like kiting back and not shooting someone, you're taking less damage received. She herself is a sniper that ignores armor and does extra good damage. And then her special ability is the next spying operation launched is not consumed. Now this costs 100 intel to use, but you could use this and then use more expensive operations and get a bit of a rebate, a reimbursement for it. Drisk is my go-to normal hero to use, but Banerjee is very fun if you're trying for some early powerful aggression, and he's just fine late game too. Drisk and Banerjee, both good. We like them both. They're happy fun times. All right, I think we're about done, everybody. Let's talk the Alan Dale final tips and tricks. We talked about the fun of Banshees killing Thopters. Shout out to Carletto for mentioning that. That's hilarious. I love it. Shout out to Doghead, whom I stole a lot of this guide from and whom I've been watching for a long time, absorbing much of his smuggler play. Doghead, one of the better smugglers in the Spice Wars community. Appreciate him a lot. Let's see. We talked about the early betrayals, super fun. If you lean into that fast Landsrad bonus from those extra propaganda cells, you can even boost really high Landsrad standing and then use that high Landsrad standing for the late game betrayals. Again, the betrayals, by giving that plus 20% damage to an already high damage faction, allows you to really boost your power to absurd levels. So don't be afraid to be a betrayer, a traitor, as the smugglers, especially if you don't want to become a pariah and you want to stay out of the low pits if possible. But if you've got a ton of Landsrad standing and more coming in, don't be afraid to use it to your benefit by being a betrayer. We're Robin Hood and our band of merry men here. We're not playing by King John's rules. A very common early strategy for the smugglers is to try to kill someone, like we mentioned earlier. Killing someone opens up a lot of the map, makes a lot of the more things possible. It's not something you have to do, but bullying someone is totally viable. I think you should always do it. Bullying many people is is also viable, but you got to be careful with how many enemies you make. Again, you want to try to avoid blood feuds unless the blood feud's going to end by you killing this person, right? If you don't kill that person and they're just trying to kill you the whole game, that's you being put in the back foot. So kill someone early if you can kill them, and if you can't kill them, then try not to make a permanent enemy out of them. So you wanna maybe pillage their lands and not too much though. We talked about being able to mouse over the resources to see their upkeep and the pillage rewards. That's very useful. We like that super fast energy source, and if you don't get that energy source, then we like a fast fusion plant because we really, really want our fast scavenging drone. Whew. Anything else? I think that's it. Questions and comments down below. If I think of anything else, I will throw it in some comments. If things change in the future, we'll update this. But I think this is a decent guide to get you going. Smugglers, very hard to learn, a lot to think about, but super fun, super rewarding. It is entirely likely that it might take you a while to get the hand of smuggler armies and combat and things, and you may end up getting kicked around a bit. Things to be afraid of are Fremen armies, which can sneak up on you stealthed and generally run very fast and will jump on your snipers and kill them all. There's not a great counter to that other than trying to get your Wraith up as quick as possible and maybe relying more on monitoring stations to try to pull them out of stealth, catch them before they get on top of you. Fremen are just very difficult to deal with. They're sort of a hard counter for the smugglers. Smugglers, meanwhile, are a very hard counter towards Vernius, also a bit towards ECAS because they can pick off the important ECAS champions with their big sniper blobs. Yeah, those are the top things that come to mind as other armies to think about. Otherwise, smugglers, super strong. Really love Harkonnens and Carino because they can take their economic benefits and make them smuggler economic benefits. All right, we've belabored the point. Smugglers, super fun. Play them tomorrow. You're going to have a great time with them. Thanks, guys, for watching. I appreciate you, and we will see you next time. That's a smuggler guide for you.